Welcome to the Steam Autumn Sale, running now through December 4th. This one is honestly fairly short-lived. Let's jump straight in and take a look at the strategy and simulation game deals on offer. And given Civilization 7 is coming out soon, there'll be some similar games sprinkled throughout the video, like this one, Humankind, at 75% off, brings it down to around $10 US, though bear in mind, regional pricing will vary as mine are natively in New Zealand dollars. Now, Humankind is a game similar to Civilization. In fact, it was labelled by many, including me, as a potential Civ 6 killer. Did it turn out to be that? No. Let's be real, it didn't. Is it a great game? I believe so. It's had a load of updates, and just recently, Amplitude and Sega went separate ways, and Amplitude is now, I believe, back to an independent studio fully and wholeheartedly. Humankind is a 4X turn-based historical strategy game. Spread across around 7 ages, you'll change your culture many times, and this has been a point of controversy throughout its life. However, there may be some recent life sprinkled back into it with this update revealing a whole load of great changes, and honestly, at its price point, I can't recommend Humankind highly enough to a 4X lover. Speaking of which, and in a slightly more niche category, we move on to Old World at 75% off again, brings it to just about $9 or $10 US. Old World is set within a specific time period, but it is a different 4X turn-based beast. Yes, it's still historical, but this game, as you may have heard in the past, is kind of like a merger between Crusader Kings, the story, narrative-driven grand strategy, with a turn-based 4X game, as you can see by looking at the gameplay footage. Now, whether you choose to marry off a few of your sisters or go out for a hunt that might end unfortunately like that one from season 1 of Game of Thrones, it's entirely up to you. But the real premise here is that as well as building an empire within this very specific period of history tied to human lifespans, with a human dynasty, you'll encounter so many events and so many options. It's a wonderful, unique, and often overlooked blend. Let's move through to another one of those. This game is called Solium Infernum. At a far less impressive 30% off, I admit, about $22 US, this game I called earlier this year Civilization in Hell, because that's exactly what it is. I played it single player and then multiplayer with my brother, who is not a strategy gamer, and I think he really enjoyed it. It's an interesting game, where you have but a few actions to make each turn, whether you use them politically, or to move your units across the relatively small map, maybe engage in a fight, try and take a stronghold, a city if you will, though that's fairly loose, or maybe train a military unit, which are very expensive. You'll need to build up a whole load of different currencies to get them. The opportunity cost of your turn is high. The decisions matter. This is a game that is a 4X game, obviously, and fairly easy to pick up, but very difficult to master. Single player, multiplayer, both super fun. This is a surprisingly great game, and of course re-inspired from a classic. Speaking of a classic, let's move on to our next entry. Bit of a meme, but actually, is it? It's Civilization 4, the complete edition. 80% off, literally chump change, right? $3, $4 US. You can pick up Civ 4, as well as colonization and the other elements of this, I think, 4-part DLC package for literally nothing. It won't be to everybody's tastes, obviously. I feel like it might have came out like 20, 25 years ago. I don't know. A long time ago. And you can tell by the way it looks. However, it is arguably one of the best Civ games ever made. And so, in the build-up to Civilization 7, you might like to revisit one of these classics for, again, literally chump change. Speaking of chump change, probably the better recommendation for most people will of course be Civilization 6. The base game, maybe throw in some of the DLC. The first 2 DLC packs are very important. The rest of the extra DLC, the leaders and the game modes, that's entirely up to you. The game's been given out free all over the shop. In fact, if you've got a Netflix subscription, you'll be able to play it for free very soon on your iOS or Android device or what have you. Nonetheless, it is obviously a kingpin 4X strategy game. It couldn't be a video like this without recommending it at 90% off. Hey, sorry to interrupt, I realize you might just be stopping by, checking out a Steam sale, never having viewed me before and not interested in hearing from me again, that's okay. But If you'd like to subscribe, if you like games like this, please do, as we are so close to that 100,000 mark. Let's get back to the video. Next up, again inspired by the classics, this is Songs of Conquest at around $10 US. I think this is another no-brainer. It's a Heroes of Might and Magic-esque inspired game about building an empire within either a campaign or a sandbox mode. There's also a really neat turn-based combat where you wage war with other factions, many within the game. You'll move through a map, build settlements, gather resources, and use that to get more units, with magic and fighting and all sorts. It's a great game. Equally great, and perhaps overlooked, is Galactic Civilizations 4, the Supernova edition. At 50% off, it's perhaps middle of the road as far as discounts go in this video, $20 US will pick you up the base game, and you probably don't need a lot of the DLC, though I am a bit of a warlord, and I do love warlords. That being said, this is the game for Stellaris lovers who are tired of spending $100 a year for the last decade to keep up with Stellaris. Does it still have that DLC model? Of course it does, but I think that Galactic Civilizations 4 is in quite a special place. You can pick it up for about $20 US, and the base game has so much to offer. Looking at the player counts for it, I don't think enough people are playing this game. It's a brilliant turn-based strategy game with depth from politics to building cities. The fleet customization is maybe almost unparalleled. It does have a few rough edges, but they keep updating it, and I'm a big fan of Gal Civ 4. You might want to check it out. Moving on to a game that is new, very new, released in August, Memoriapolis is 20% off, which brings it, again, regional prices might vary, and I think they vary quite a bit here, but it brings it down to around $10, $12 US. This is a city builder set across 4 different ages, largely classically inspired, of course, as you can tell by the look and feel of it. It's also about politics and about gathering resources. The trade-offs that it offers are sometimes kind of harsh, but overall they help to shape what is quite an intriguing city builder. It reminds me a little bit of Ara History Untold, if that game had just focused on building one city in a strategic world, instead of sort of trying to tackle civilization and maybe not quite landing it very well, though as an off-topic note, I think it has received some updates. Nonetheless, I'd encourage you to check it out. Fairly new, discount's fairly low. What is not fairly new, and the discount is relatively high at 66% off, about $5, is Slay the Spire. I've talked about this one before. I played it a lot, actually, I have to admit, not on Steam, but on my iPad when I used to have an iPad. I played this game for days and days. Its daily challenges are awesome. The campaign mode is awesome. Move your way through a rogue-like procedurally generated series of levels where you'll fight these enemies using the cards in your DECK. Different classes offer different options, some a lot of armor, some more aggressive stances. As you move through, no run will be the same, of course. It takes roguelike to the extreme, and you can customize all sorts of things with the in-game store, boss fights. It's such a pleasure to play. It's so simple. It's a very simple deck builder, but the replayability is immense. I'd really encourage you to play it if you haven't already. Speaking of encouraging you to play it if you haven't already, this is Norland, 35% off, about $15 US. For me, this game fits perfectly into the same sub-genre as a game like RimWorld. It's a colony builder, where it's not just like build a city, gather some wood, build a larger city. No. There's a lot more detail, first of all, so the learning curve is relatively high. And secondly, it's a game that's really focused on building a story and a narrative, just like RimWorld is. You'll get these little dudes in your city. They'll have names, they'll have personalities, they'll interact with one another, and you'll maybe build a bit of a relationship with some of them as you move through. It sounds weird because they look weird, but it's very true. It's a great game about building a complex story within a complex real-time strategic world. Think RimWorld, but maybe marginally better. Now we have a game whose title is just absolutely devised by a lunatic. Warhammer 40,000 Gladius, Relics of War. Take a big deep breath in before you say that again. Is actually, genuinely though, a 4X strategy game that kind of just delivers on all of the fundamental points and does it very well. Obviously, a sci-fi setting, and perhaps a little bit more of a stripped back game and compared to some of the others that I've mentioned on this list in terms of depth, though I shouldn't actually let that put you off, because in reality, this game, whose title I won't repeat, it's actually a really great 4X game. About 6 or 7 years old at this point, probably SIX. It's a game about really a relatively small number of factions fighting one another over a planet's resources. 4X in every way imaginable, and at a price point that is maybe the best on this list, perhaps only competing with Civilization 6 at 90% off. It brings it down to around $3 US. The question of DLC will come up a lot throughout this video, I'm sure, and again with this game. It's like, oh, well, okay, Jumbo, I can buy this for $3 US. Chump change behind the cushions on the couch. But do I then need to spend $100 to have it be playable? Do I need to buy all of the DLC once I've played it for an hour or two? I think with this game the answer is no. But with my last recommendation, the answer could very well be yes. My final recommendation, it would be kind of unfair to not mention these games, the many games offered by Paradox. My favourites are Crusader Kings 3, Age of Wonders 4, 2 solid games, as well as Victoria 3, which I copped a lot of flack for liking that game, but I do believe it is a good, historical, economically driven, grand strategy game. Nonetheless, the Paradox titles really need to be mentioned, but I've mentioned them so many times before that I just kind of feel like I'm repeating myself by mentioning them again and again and again. And of course, as I mentioned just before, there's that DLC conundrum as well. Buy one of these and then get stuck in a $500 loop of DLC. In most cases, I actually don't think that's true. I think genuinely you can get the base game, maybe 1 or 2 expansions, and be totally fine, particularly if you're a new player. And that, my friends, will wrap up this video. I feel like it's been a long time since I've made a Steam strategy game deal video. And we're getting into the season. Don't forget 2 important things. Firstly, the sale does not run for long. A week at the time of recording, probably only a couple of days at the time of you watching. And secondly, New Zealand prices were used to calculate the US prices. So your regional prices may vary by a few dollars here or there. Finally, actually, as a bonus point, we are of course approaching the holidays. So, if you don't want to pick up something this sale, there'll probably be one in another few weeks before Christmas. Finally, none of these recommendations have come from sponsorships or money being paid behind the scenes or anything like that. In case you haven't noticed, I see these deals as soon as you do. As soon as they're publicly live, I start working on these videos. Today it was at 5 o'clock this morning, and it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, at the time of recording this voiceover, I don't have insider insights, and anybody who does publish a Steam video like this as soon as the sale goes live should probably spark a little bit of curiosity on your end. Either way, thank you for joining me today for these recommendations. I'll see you next time.